Welcome back to the Oracle Sports Podcast. I'm Oracle Sports Editor Nolan Brown.
And I'm Hannah Lely.
And we have a very, very packed show up ahead. We have a lot to talk about. We have a great guest. Honestly, in my humble opinion, I think it was one of our best discussions on this series so far. But that's later on in the show. There's a lot to talk about. USF football is back. They started their workouts yesterday, voluntary on-campus workouts. We got to talk to Coach Jeff Scott. He said that 80 players were tested for coronavirus, and there's a big fat goose egg that came back. So that's great to hear. Slowly starting to phase things back in. We're hearing that basketball might be returning to campus soon. We're supposed to hear some updates on Monday. Very exciting stuff for USF. I'm very excited that sports are back. Hannah, how are you feeling?
I'm so excited. I did a little mini dance when I found everything out. I was like, yes, I am just looking forward to football season at this point. And, that's a huge thing of fall and just a fall semester is football. And I love football. And, I feel like this whole time we haven't really known if it is coming back or not. And it's kind of been wishy-washy and up in the air. And now we're finally seeing them coming back and it looks good. And I'm going to stay positive and manifest that it is going to happen. Same with basketball because I want basketball to return too. I just want it all to come back because it's been boring without them.
Yeah, you could say that again, honestly. It has been very boring without them. And I think I was talking with Ben McCool. I'll go ahead and give him a shout out with USF Rivals at media availability yesterday. And he's like, this is just so nice just to have some sort of news. And I feel like we're getting back into the swing of it. And so I agree. It was very cool to see that. Again, we're being cautiously optimistic about it. It's not set in stone. I feel like the cards are all laid out. They're building a card tower. But if you make one wrong move, then it all comes tumbling down. And I think this quote from Jeff Scott the other day, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, if let's say one of our quarterbacks tests positive and then he's in the quarterback room and, they're with the other guys, do you have to sit out all of your quarterbacks? And so that's something that's a very real possibility.
I was thinking about that because the UCF players tested positive. And, how is that going to affect them? I mean, thankfully it hasn't happened to us, but, it's a very real thing. It's in Orlando, Tampa, it's not that much distance. So hopefully it all works out, but we're already seeing it in UCF, but none at UF, right? And I don't think anything from FSU. So
yeah, I mean that's a real possibility. It's what are you going to do in that situation? It's your quarterback is finally finding his rhythm, and then all of a sudden, he's got a quarantine for 14 days. Oh shucks, then you got to start all over. All shucks, it really just But yeah, I mean it's a real possibility, and hopefully it doesn't happen. Fingers crossed. I feel like USF is doing everything they can not to have that happen, which is great. You mentioned Orlando. Very interesting that you mentioned that because basically there's going to be a big Disney sport bash, and I love it. It's going to be NBA's back, MLS is back, and they're going to be in Orlando. It's going to be great. I'm pretty excited for it.
I'm so excited. I'm from Orlando, to anybody who didn't know, and I was thinking that maybe I should try and go to Disney when these things are happening, because usually when you have a sports event at ESPN Worldwide, that thing of sports.
That one, yeah.
That one, everyone knows it. You also get Disney tickets most of the time, and you go while you're there. So, I would always be going to Disney growing up, and there'd always be either soccer players around the parks or cheerleading teams, because a lot of Worlds for cheerleading is held there. A lot of sports are over there. So you go to Disney. I should go to Disney and try to meet them and find them. But yeah,
that'd be so cool. I mean, just thinking about how many athletes are going to be there, and just you never know who you're going to walk in. You might be on the teacup ride, and all of a sudden, you got the whole Utah Jazz team just chilling there. I don't know, Donovan Mitchell's on the teacups. That would be great.
I went to Animal Kingdom, I think it was 1 year ago or 2 years ago, and a player from the Steelers were there. And Like, he was just there with his family, and, like, I remember I was with my friends, and, one of my guy friends, like, that's his favorite team, and he was freaking out. And you're like, come on, let's go talk to him. He's like, no, he's with his family. I don't want to, like, interrupt him. But, it's really cool just to run into people like that, and especially in Disney. That's so weird. But, Orlando's a huge spot for that. And later we're going to talk about, the Women's Soccer League. And, when they came down to Orlando, my cousin, who I also mentioned later in the podcast, plays soccer, and she was able to meet them. And that was so cool for her. And it was cool to hear about it. And I didn't go with her. I wish I did. But, that's so cool.
Yeah, fun fact. Fun that you mentioned that. I'm thinking back. I've told this story to our old sports editor Brian Hattab so many times, and every time I mention it up, he is like, "Shut up, Nolan! Like, stop. We heard this before." At my internship last semester, it was at a place called Company Man Studios. It's right on Kennedy, and it's right next to a Buddy Brew Coffee. I'm not paid to say this by them, but it's great coffee. You should go check it out.
Brew.
It's so good. It's great. And it was like my second day at the internship, and we would have like an agreement with Buddy Brew where we get free coffee, and I came along with the team and everything. And I remember I was standing in line, and I look over and like I see this group of like athletic looking women, and I'm like, oh, maybe. At first I was like, whatever, runners come through here all the time. I didn't even think about it. And then I'm looking, and I remember seeing this one woman who's wearing like a red hoodie, and I was like, God, that looks an awful lot like Lindsey Horan, who plays for the national team. And I'm like staring at her, and I was like, I'm trying not to make it obvious. And I look even further. I'm like, that is Lindsey Horan. And I look ahead of me, and there's Morgan Bryan. And I remember looking down, and I see these pair of shoes, and they were New Balance. I remember specifically. And like the whole fit was New Balance. I was like, all right, you're dripping in New Balance. Like, we get it. And Rose Lavelle is sponsored by New Balance. And I realized, I was like, that's Rose Lavelle. Like, this is incredible. And I'm looking around, and I see all these people. I'm like, oh, there's Crystal Dunn. There's Alyssa Nair. There's all these people. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, I'm sitting there trying not to freak out because, yeah, I'm with my new internship. I want to make a good impression. And I see all this, and I'm like, this is so cool. And the door opens up, and Julie Ertz comes in with more people, with Ashlyn Harris. And I'm like, there's like half the team here at the point. And they're all sitting like in this Buddy Brew, just having breakfast or whatever. And I remember telling my supervisor, I was like, I gotta like say something. I was like, but I was like, how do I go up to a whole group of them and just be like, what do I say at that point? And I'd left my phone in the office because I was like, oh, we're just going for a quick, it's literally like a 2-minute walk. They're like right next door to each other. So I couldn't even be like, oh, hey, like, can we get a picture? Like, whatever. And so finally, Rose Lavelle and Lindsey Horan, they went back in line. I guess they wanted more coffee or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to say something to those two. Cause like, those are like my two favorites on the team. And so there I was. And I was just like, I come up and I was just like, you guys are great. I was like, that's all I had to say. Cause like, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Ask for a picture? I didn't have a phone on me. So I was like, you guys are great. And I hope you enjoy Tampa. And so they both were like, wow, like, thanks. Like, we appreciate it. And so it was a really cool moment. And I remember, I don't even remember what happened next. I just I was like, what do I wasn't like nervous or anything. I mean, I kind of was, but it was just like, what do you say in that situation? Like, hey, what's up? You're famous. And I don't know, cool moment, a little bit of a tangent, but.
Oh my gosh, that's how I felt when I met Erin Andrews. I like freaked out. I was like, what am I supposed to say? But like, when you meet people like that you look up to, and you see them in person, it's okay to say the story all the time. It was exciting. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been working in sports for a bit. I wouldn't say a while, but I've been around athletes, stuff like that, and I'm kind of it's a natural part of things. You talk with them, and a lot of people are like, "Whoa, you got to talk to Sue," and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of part of the job at this point. But for some reason, I was just like freaking out. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, they just won a World Cup, and they're just chilling at a coffee shop eating breakfast, and I'm like, wow, they're normal people too. What's that?
Next to the place you were interning at.
Exactly, on my second day too, and I was just like, what a great day. So,
What a great day.
but yeah, I mean, a lot of them, play for the NWSL, which is coming back. Actually, it's going to be the first league that comes back in Utah. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of like how they have it out or how they're going to have it out in Orlando, but this is going to be like the Utah Bash, I guess. I don't know how they're going to do it there, but it's the NWSL Challenge Cup. It starts June 27th. First league back. Interesting enough, CNBC said, "Oh, the MLS is going to be the first league back," and everybody, including me, was like, "Come on, man! Look, NWSL is going to be the first league back, and MLS is like coming back in July." So, and they corrected the article, but it's like, really, like, how'd you drop the ball on that? So we talk about it with our guest, coach of the USF women's soccer, Denise Schilte-Brown. We have a very, very great conversation with her. So Hannah, unless you have anything else that you want to drop on the line here, we're going to go ahead and segue into that. So
let's go.
Our guest this week is actually one of the longest serving USF coaches. She took USF to the NCAA tournament the last 3 years in a row. And last season, they made it their deepest run in program history. Of course, we're talking about Coach Denise Schilte-Brown. How are you, first of all?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and look forward to spending this time with you and getting to speak with the USF fans. It's been great.
Excellent. Well, I'd first like to just start off by asking, what have you been doing in your free time with all of this going on? I know a lot of people have been trying to figure out sort of hobbies to keep them busy. I'm sure you've been busy with work, but what have you been doing in your free time?
So, yeah, of course, work's kept me busy in different ways that you wouldn't expect. But in terms of my personal life, we bought a jet ski. So my husband and I, a couple of years ago, we bought a little strip of property, a lake property where we planned on building, and we haven't built yet. And so there's a dock out there, and we just bought a little jet ski, and we've been bringing our twins and our family out there and trying to enjoy the water because you can get good social distancing out there, and it's healthy, it's outside, and can enjoy, the spoils that Florida offers.
Hey, why not? So do you guys just like run a course, or do you just kind of cruise around, or how does it work?
We bought like one of those 3-seaters so that we can tube the twins, and we actually do a little skiing and kneeboarding and sometimes little kayaking or swimming, and honestly a bit of music and sitting out in the dock trying to decompress from Zoom meetings, because we're on Zoom meetings perpetually, or Microsoft Teams, and just trying to connect. Everything is so electronic. It's just the way to get a break from it.
Yeah, speaking of that, there's been a lot of challenges people have been facing, just from working from home, and some people actually prefer it. So as a coach, what's been the most difficult part about that, and what's something that made the process easier?
Hey, Hannah.
Hi.
It's funny. I was just getting ready for this, and I was wearing like a gray shirt, and I was like, oh, I need a USF shirt. So like a costume change can happen in 2 seconds. And there's a lot more hours because of the travel time. You think about the time it just takes you in the morning to get ready for work, and then you drive in, and then you've kind of got to get ready again in your office. And kind of the same thing. You're wrapping up in the office, and then you got to travel home, and then you get home and you kind of have to acclimate to your family again, the pleasantries and checking in with your family. And so, that's probably 3 hours out of your day, just all that transition time. So it seems like I have more time, and I'm getting projects done more thoroughly. In my to-do lists, they don't seem as overwhelming. They're longer at times, but I can really knock them out. So those are the positives. The negatives, I would say, is that I don't have a home office, so I seem to take over the kitchen, and I think that drives my family a little bit crazy because that's like a central area for us. Or you kind of feel trapped in your, our offices in our bedroom, and then you're in that room for kind of hours at a time. And sometimes it can be a little bit suffocating. That's why I was saying having that outlet, that lake outlet where you're just with water and nature for, even if it's 30 minutes, that is so helpful mentally, I think.
That's funny that you mentioned that you don't have a home office, because right now I'm sitting at our dining table in my house, and my mom has one side of the room or of the house, and then my brother has the other. So I'm kind of just right stuck in the middle.
I
But
mean,
one of
we always work from home. I mean, we're coaches, so like our prospects are at home in the evening. The high school coaches and club coaches are at home in the evening. So like phone calls are always done in the evenings. And then, you know, you're working on your laptop, but that didn't really require hours of time, you know, in a space to yourself. So we never really built a home office. We just, like you said, we worked in our dining room, our kitchen, or our bedroom, whatever was kind of available, wherever the twins weren't in the moment. That's where we would be. But now it feels necessary to have one.
Yeah, you know, it'd be so much better if we just had a warning before this whole thing happened. Just to
Yeah, you
kind of,
know, we can definitely restructure our houses to suit the needs better.
well,
Spending
you've
so
been,
much time at home, my parents have like decided to redo our whole house, and like
They
now
did?
they're like, well, now that we're stuck inside, I realize everything that's wrong.
Oh, believe me, we have new countertops. We got our dining room tiled. We painted our house and have a new roof. That all happened during COVID. That's crazy.
I mean, you got all of it done, so there you
Yeah.
go.
Boom. We never cared about the house before.
hey, if you're going to be home, you might as well just make it look the best.
Exactly. Trying, you know?
Well, one of the facets of your job that's probably keeping you very busy is on the recruiting side. You know, there's been a lot of speculation among coaches as to whether, now that we're at home and we can, you know, talk to players via Zoom or things like that, that this recruiting process has been a lot easier. I know Jeff Scott has kind of alluded to that. He's like, you know, I can basically call up people, you know, in a list basically. And I just want to know how you found that recruiting process. I mean, we've seen
Oh,
it
I think,
produce.
yeah, mine is the opposite. I think it's a lot harder. My landscape changed completely. Luckily, right at the end of the season, we dove into recruiting hard and fast. So all three coaches went on the road. I think we knocked out about like 4 or 5 trips, luckily, right before this all hit, you know? So we had a nice base, definitely for this season and next season. But this is the time of year where we create the youngest part of our recruiting, you know, our recruiting lists. Is we're out right now, like looking at those sophomores and really evaluating, you know, who we want to focus on for the future. And we're not getting to see any of them play. I mean, we have the lists when they were freshmen, but it's a huge jump in terms of maturity and growth. And it's really important that you see that group play again. And we're missing that opportunity. So I feel like, you know, you kind of get used to the timeline of your recruiting management. And I think that this has slowed everything down, and then everything's going to go like full speed again. So it's a bit of a roller coaster.
So what, have you seen your players play at all? Have you seen them sort of do any videos or anything at home, or how's that process been working with your team?
No, I mean, you're not legally allowed to do that. They can follow the strength and conditioning program. So we have a private Instagram account, and our strength coach posts all the videos. I think he's been amazing. It's very visual. You can actually do the workout along with them, which is pretty cool. Obviously we do our tactical meetings. We're allowed to do tactical meetings. So we've done our plan so that the girls understand it. We, you know, did it in the phases of the game, and then we broke up in groups and they like represented it to us. We've done some tactical cahoots. We've done just meeting to make sure their welfare is okay. And then obviously, you know, we went right into COVID, into this emotional time in our society of such uncertainty for people, you know, anger, frustration, sadness, confusion, you know, all these emotions are coming up across the board and right on the heels of COVID. So I really feel for college students right now. They're really trying to figure themselves out. They're trying to create an identity of who they are. And this is the time in their life where they're supposed to be allowed to do that, figure out who they are. And they're kind of thrown into this, you know, pandemic, and then, you know, massive societal argument, I would call it, you know, so it's not easy.
So there's been 9 signed recruits across November and April, and some have experience at the international level or with the U.S. Developmental Academy. And as a whole, what stands out to you most about this class?
Wow, that's a great question. One of the things that stands out for me is that it's a large class. I graduated a large class, a large impactful class. So, of course, it's expected that this class would be, a powerhouse of a class in terms of numbers and ability. So I think what stands out for me is excitement and potential. I just think about the class. I think about the girls that we're going to be dealing with, and what brought us to the point to want to bring them in. And we see so many of them as contributors, and we're just excited about what they're going to bring to the table. But there isn't like one thing that they all bring, because it's such a diverse group and large group, and positionally they cover all the positions, that I wouldn't just say it's their athleticism or their technical ability or their mind for the game. It's kind of diverse across the board.
Denise, I know I've kind of talked your ear off about this, but with the whole thing with, just the senior class that you had last year that graduated, it was so impactful. And what has been the challenge of trying to, I know you haven't seen them in action or anything, but just trying to, on paper, trying to fill in those gaps of where the senior class moved on?
I mean, it's been hard emotionally to break from that senior class. We were so connected to them, and the ending of their careers hit during this pandemic, and they're all playing professionally. That's been their goals. And so, trying to find contracts and sign with pro teams when everything came to a halt, that's been, that's been sad in some ways, because, we have such huge expectations for that group and excited to see their next steps. And I think their vision was to be playing their pro career right now, like training and playing in games. And to have that come to a halt, they had to mentally work through that. So it was nice that they let us in and allowed us to be a part of that, to help them get through some of that. And we're still trying to sort out some of their next steps. But in terms of the gap that they left for USF, I mean, it's a big hole. But we just won't be the same. Chris and I have obviously been coaching for years, and we've lost great players in the past and great classes. And I think what's important is that you don't try to fill those shoes the same way. We're not looking to lose one class and one team and then look the same way and fill those shoes the same way the next year. You have to, adopt the new players and really be introspective about what's the best for this group. What do we look like now with this group? So, system of play will be different. The way we score goals will be different. The way we defend will be different. We still will have our USF identity, our overall, possession style of play, the way we like to break teams down, but we won't be filling, Andrea Hochstadter's spot with somebody like Andrea Hochstadter. They'll be different. Maybe they're a stronger ball winner. Maybe they make more overlapping runs. Maybe they're, a different style of player. They'll be just as talented, but not the same player. So I think it'll be a big challenge to fill those shoes. All the seniors have left their mark, but exciting to see the sophomores and juniors and freshmen step up. I think they're ready to be take some of that limelight, and then some freshmen that will just, really, really impress us.
I want to switch gears a bit. I actually want to talk about the NWSL Challenge Cup, which is coming up in a couple weeks. We'll get to see Evelyn Vienne, obviously very impactful for USF. We'll get to see her out there with Sky Blue. It's going to be the first American league that comes back. It's funny. I saw a tweet from CNBC, and it said that the MLS was going to be the first league back, and a lot of people were up in arms about that. But anyway, so it is going to be the first league back. Do you think that it'll set the precedent for these other leagues that are trying to come back? I know, the MLS, the NHL, NBA. Do you think that it'll kind of set the pace for those leagues?
I'm just excited that you brought it up. I don't think that there is enough press, if I'm being honest. I don't think that it hasn't hit the papers and the news the way it should. You would hope that everybody is excited and talking about the first league to start back up, and that it's the women's pro league, women's soccer pro league, and that they've, worked so hard to initiate this cup and get all the teams to Utah. And it's a lot of work, and it's going to be very exciting. And I cannot wait to see Evelyn in action in that setting. It's going to be very exciting. But I wonder the impact it'll have if people don't step up and create more awareness about it. So, like I said, I appreciate that you brought it up in the podcast, because I wish more people would get excited, just get on board and, respect the league and what they've done to keep women's soccer relevant, to keep the pro game, going, and to kick it off, to be an example for these leagues. And I mean, that's a big deal.
With the state of the NWSL, there's the new TV deals with MLS teams, and what would a successful return of the NWSL mean for the future of the league?
It's incredible. I mean, I hope that this cup allows some budgetary management so that the league stays strong, because I think it made so much progress. And the draft was incredible. I think they did an incredible job to be professional and to make the experience the right one for the league and the girls. And then the teams last year had some, great soccer and great momentum, and everybody's very aware that the league exists. So what we want is this cup, this challenge in Utah, to really gain some momentum. So that's why I feel like, media is going to play a big role in us coming back strong as a league. So we have to get excited about this tournament. It's going to be competitive. We got to highlight the strong players in the league and just, create awareness so that when it resumes back to, our regular league, you have new followers, new awareness, newfound appreciation for what this league has brought to the country and to youth soccer.
Well, that's a great thing that you mentioned youth soccer. I want to talk about that for a minute. The U.S. Developmental Soccer Academy got disbanded. I think it was a mix of COVID things and just, different platforms that were coming up a few weeks ago. And then since that deal, there was a deal reached with the MLS. They would have a developmental academy, and the Elite Clubs National League, they're going to be expanding as well. As a college coach, when you see that happening, what does that mean for you when recruiting players in the future? And will there be some sort of new expectations for a quality of players?
You know what? I'm pretty excited about the disbandment of the DA from a women's soccer coach's perspective. The men are going to have a different view. U.S. soccer prioritized youth males over youth females. That's been a frustrating source for me. The DA existed for like 6 years before they even initiated the developmental academy for the girls. When they did initiate it, they didn't put the right time and thought into how to make it applicable for girls to enjoy it and to make it the right fit for them. So it never took off the way it should for girls soccer, and then it was just a competitor for ECNL. So in my opinion, it just watered down the ECNL league that had already established itself. It was an incredible league. It was well run. It was driven for college coaches. All the best players were playing in that league. The DA for women come in 6 years late, not well run. All it did was water down the ECNL league. So the disbandment of it for us as, female college coaches is allowing all the best players back into the ECNL. And the ECNL has created now a second tier, which is ECNL-R. So there's going to be an ability to grow clubs and teams underneath the top ECNL team. So I think they're doing things right. I'm really excited about that. Again, I don't love that the media is highlighting how the U.S. national team women's lawsuit has somehow contributed to the abandonment of the developmental academy. I think we should be celebrating the fact that these women are standing up for their equal pay. And I think that's the right thing for U.S. soccer to do. And I really hope they win that lawsuit, but I don't think that should be the focal point to the DA going away, So there's, again, you got awareness for the female side of the game is something that I'd like to continue to promote and be a part of the growth and awareness so that, our young champions can grow up and get equal pay and be celebrated just like the men are. And that's going to be a pretty important piece.
Nolan, you can take the next one.
Okay. So it's funny that you mentioned the case, and not really funny because it's just a segue, but it's been about a month since the federal judge in California ruled partly in favor of the U.S. Soccer Federation in that ongoing lawsuit for equal pay. And the women's national team said that they would be appealing after the partial ruling, and the case will likely continue on in the summer and probably into September as well. I know, Denise, we talked about this about a year ago when this whole thing was started, and we had a very long discussion on this. And but now that there's a new president at the Soccer Federation, U.S. women's national team, world champions, where do you see this case going now, and what do you think that legacy will be?
I mean, regardless of the outcome of the case, I think there's going to be change. They've promoted change, and they've done an incredible job. These women have stepped up and opened up the eyes. Almost everyone I speak to, male, female, soccer fan, not, agree that the U.S. women's soccer team has, helped our country, like, celebrate, have pride in being American. And the U.S. women's soccer is a huge part of that. And they've been so successful, and they deserve to be treated and paid, fairly for that accomplishment. And the men have years of historical media behind them, and years of people watching them play, and it being familiar to them that they would support the men. It's going to take time to get the same amount of fans in the stands for our women's pro league. We haven't existed. It's still an afterthought. It's still a different game that people need to adjust their eyes to, that the media has to, really get the attention. We have to celebrate the best players. And until, society sees that as the norm, there's no decision for families. Should we go to an MLS game or an NWSL game? They're still going to MLS games because that's what they see on TV. That's what they see in the paper. There's familiar players because they get bigger press in the World Cup. So until we get those same opportunities, families are going to continue to support MLS, like the non-soccer community especially. So we have to continue to create momentum for the women's league and give them opportunities so that they can catch up. And we've afforded that throughout society in different situations, Title IX, equitable hiring, those kind of things. We need to give, the women's sports continued time to grow, but treat them fairly and equally.
I really like how you said that. And my boyfriend's older sister played D1 soccer for Concord University, and my younger cousin, her dream is to play college women's soccer and, go as far as she can. But we had the same conversation about it about a year ago when it all happened. And, they said very similar things, how the press needs to draw more attention to it. And I'm a huge proponent for that. And I really hope that it does happen because, it's a shame that it's not.
I mean, I think that people want to look at it as a business model. And in a business model, it's equitable when MLS is drawing bigger fans, making more money, playing in bigger stadiums, that they make more money. I understand that business, perspective. I'm not naive to that, but they reached that opportunity because we as women and this society all allowed them that time to grow as a sport. We gave them all the media. They had all the press. They had all the money. And it took both men and women to allow that to happen, even when they weren't making money in the beginning, even when their stands were half full. And women just need that same amount of time and support to catch up. And if we're not afforded that, then the business model, and we just go directly on the business model, then yeah, we're not going to ever get equal pay. But given time and given equal opportunity for press and an open mind, and honestly, women need to support women. They need to step up and say, no, I want to take the family to an NWSL game. I want to, donate to the women's program. And, they have to keep their eyes open that we're trying to that women are trying to fight for equality, and it starts by supporting one another.
What does it mean when the men's team come out and they say basically that they're on board with the women's team, that they're, basically calling out the soccer federation? And what does that mean when people are still ignoring, women's games or things like that?
I think the men that have done that are incredibly strong men and are so appreciated, and just have a better grasp on how important it is that we lift each other up. It can't just be men on top, and it can't be just the women on top. We've got to go together. We live together. We're cultivating this earth together, and we're not going to get very far very fast by suppressing one and just celebrating the other. And I think the men that have stepped up are courageous and bold, and not willing or willing to take the criticism and they know that's going to impact them in some ways, construed as negatively, because we have to get that money and that time from somewhere, and some of that will detract from the men's side. So I think it's excellent. Bob, the men's soccer coach at USF, Butenhorn, he's a wonderful proponent for equality and women's sports, and I've really enjoyed working with him, and just to have a counterpart at USF that sees the game that way, it's very liberating, and it allows us to have these kind of voices and this kind of presence, knowing that there's support within the department and men around us that are, celebrating our words.
Yeah, Bob's great. I have to come out and say it. He's just a great guy.
He is.
Last question for me. A little bit of a fun question. So the Bundesliga, it's back, and it's been back for a while. They've been pumping in artificial audience sounds during their matches, and it's only on the TV broadcast. And I was listening to it the other day, and I wasn't even paying attention. I had just heard sounds of roaring fans, and I was like, I looked up and I was like, nobody's in the stadium. What's happening? So a little bit of a theoretical thing. A lot of different commentators have been talking about this, and it might kind of become part of, the game itself, theoretically, of course. What's your take on that if it becomes part of the soccer experience?
I mean, I think that, from being a parent and rearing your children, that some things are as fun as you make it. So, if you're going to go to the pool with your children and you walk there very slowly and your face shows no expression of happiness, and then when you get there, it's just kind of like, okay, we're here, then they're going to have a good time. But if they could have a good time, but if you're like, let's go, and you got a smile on your face and you're energetic, and when you get there, you have different games that you're going to play and you get in with the kids, the experience is greater. And I think that's what that sound and noises can help, especially non-soccer fans, is just help them with the energy and excitement in the moments of the game, that, even if I'm feeling excited about a moment in the game and you're beside me and you cheer, it allows me to also share that expression kind of at a heightened emotion. So I think it's a positive thing. Obviously, when you're a true soccer fan and you were going to watch it, regardless if there was any fans in the stands or any sound, that could probably be a little distracting and comical. But I think the majority of the watchers can enjoy the game at a higher level, with the sound encouraging their emotions.
And one last question. When looking at the season ahead, what are you most looking forward to?
Wow, I have not gotten to coach a soccer game in so long. It's what I do for a living. It's what I've been trained to do. It's what I've gone to school for. It's what I continue to try to grow and develop as. And so it's my passion, and I hope, the expression of being able to do that has been so suppressed. So I'm just looking forward to educating and coaching again. I miss it, and I miss the fresh air and being able to motivate my girls to accomplish this beautiful game.
Denise, we're so looking forward to the season ahead. I can't contain it myself. I'm very excited for it as I think about it. We don't want to keep you too long. We know you have to run, and it looks like we're going to get kicked off in a minute from Zoom. Denise, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for discussing this with us.
Nolan and Hannah, I really appreciate your time, and I enjoyed you very much.
Thank
Go
you.
Bulls.
And that's our show. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter at USF Oracle Sports, and we'll see you guys next week.
Again, I've been Nolan Brown.
And I'm Hannah, and have a great day, guys.